5 o'clock having arrived, I'll officially call the meeting in order, and the meeting been properly posted and the roll been taken. Thank you. And I would just point out that we had a couple of members let us know in advance they weren't able to make it, but we do have 4 of us present, 1 commissioner virtually with us, so that would constitute a quorum for this meeting. I'm moving on to item number 2, our approval of the minutes. 2.1, our approval of the minutes from the special meeting on December 9th. At this time, if there's no additions or corrections, I go ahead and entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So
there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And just to keep clear, Amy, we do have Kevin virtually.
I don't know if he's there yet or not, but you look on the phone.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes, he's there.
Oh, okay. Moving on then to item number 3, communications. I would just say at this point in the meeting, we've got a few more people here tonight than we normally would, which I think is great. Anyone that's heard me at some of our past meetings when we have a larger crowd, you can, especially up here, and staff can attest that I think there's people that should be coming to all these meetings a lot more often than we do. So it's wonderful to see all of you here this evening. I would say there's been a lot on social media. I think most of you, not all of you, but probably most of you are here for agenda item 6.3, which we'll get to a little bit later. And the city also put out a communication, but I wanted to reiterate that just in case some of you maybe didn't see that, which is we've got some public hearings. So some of these agenda items, as we go through the agenda, they could get a little confusing because they're projects that are further along than others. So you're gonna ask me to, you're gonna see me and hear me ask this public that would like to either speak in favor or against certain items, just to come up here, state your name and address for the record. But when we get to item 6.3, and there was again a communication in advance from the city, but just to bring more clarity, it's a review and a discussion really amongst the contractors or the petitioners and the commissioners, so we can gather facts, ask some early questions. And so I don't want there to be any confusion. There's going to be plenty of time as this, if this that item continues to move forward in the process for public comments, public hearings, inviting each and every one of you to speak at the appropriate time. So I just wanted you to be clear. I'm glad so many of you showed up here because all of these meetings, whether it's this committee or our other boards and commissions, is a great learning experience. So we're going to learn tonight, and all of you that are in attendance will certainly learn as well. And so just wanted to state that under communications. And with that, we'll get started, which is item number 4, a public hearing to review and possible recommendation regarding the city of Delavan. 4.1 is a public hearing on a request to consider proposed zoning ordinance amendments to create section 13-3-206 Z, food and beverages, vehicle carts and stands, and said use as a special use for the BRBLBC and ML zoning districts in section 13-2-105 and to table 13-3-203 tables of land uses, again, the applicant with the city of Delavan. With that, I would open the public hearing and invite staff to start us off.
Jackie made it. All right. I guess I'm staff since Jackie's not here tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, this came before us in the past, and the last time that we were here, Jackie might save me here.
Perfect timing.
The last time that we brought this before Plan Commission, you guys had asked us to relook at it again. You had you wanted us to relook at some of the things that we had in there to be a little bit more specific with some things, and so we did go through there and did some revisions. You want to jump on the?
Yeah, we just read them.
Okay. Jackie's gonna be able to explain this better than I, because it gets a little confusing going back and forth as to what was there and then what's there now.
Sure thing. Yeah. Hi there. I might repeat a little, no, that's okay. Might retread a little bit of what T already covered here, but this item was before the commission at a previous meeting. And so in your packet, you see draft amendment text. All of this text in the packet is new. So this is all being proposed to be added to the zoning ordinance. And so the red text is reflects changes since the previous meeting. So since we looked at the food trucks ordinance last time, these are the changes we made at the request of the planning commission. So just as to reiterate, this food trucks ordinance is being proposed because currently the city's municipal code includes regulations for food trucks both in the public right of way, so into public streets, as well as some regulations for food trucks on private property, so in private parking lots, on commercial lots, things like that. Staff felt that it was inappropriate to have regulations pertaining to private property in the municipal code in the way that it was presented. And so the recommendation was to clean up the code to make it easier to use so that staff wouldn't miss those regulations, so folks at the front desk wouldn't miss the licensing requirements. And so the suggestion that was that staff made that these amendments are attempting to bring forward are to keep this private property rules out of the municipal code that pertains to food trucks in the street. And so the zoning code is where the appropriate place to address food trucks on private property. And so this language, basically we're adding rules for food trucks on private property where none existed clearly in the zoning code. So we developed this language here requires a special use permit for food trucks on private property and a number of other regulations to ensure that they don't become a nuisance on private property. These are based on regulations we've seen in other communities with a lot of success. When we presented this draft amendment to the Plan Commission a couple of months ago, there were some concerns by commissioners that they weren't specific enough and perhaps did not address certain issues. And so we did make a number of changes. So the first one you'll see in your packet, item A, there was a comment made at Plan Commission that, what should we do about number of food trucks per property, which I think was a great comment. So we've revised this to say that 1 food truck per property, unless it's 5 acres or more. And with larger properties that are 5 acres or more, you could apply for a conditional use permit to have more than 1 food truck. One thing I wanted to note as well is that for all special uses, so we're requiring that food trucks get a special use permit that would be reviewed by T in his office. But for all special use permits, T has the ability to, if they're complicated or there's some unusual circumstances, he has the ability to elevate them up to conditional use permits for review by the Plan Commission. So if it's just something that's a little challenging and he would like Plan Commission input, he can always bring those to the Plan Commission. So just want to make you aware of that. So as you review this, we're probably not foreseeing every single possible issue that may be faced by food trucks. And so in such cases, T may choose to elevate those to the Plan Commission for review. We added a few other changes here about placement to ensure that we have general language basically saying that food trucks can't block vehicular or pedestrian or bicycle paths. But then we added more specific language here about locating them at least 25 feet from a driveway entrance, 10 feet from a building entrance or fire lane. And then another comment that we received from the Plan Commission a few months ago was concerns about the food trucks consuming a parking space on places where parking was already tight. So in item M here, we've added a requirement that food trucks would not be permitted on properties where they're not meeting their minimum parking requirements. And then we also cleaned up the language about what types of signage would be approved for, or allowed for food trucks. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, no,
Jackie, going back for a second to that minimum parking requirement,
Yes,
it, or what we saying there is a minimum parking requirement for the private property.
that's right.
We're not establishing a new or different parking requirement.
Yep, that's correct. We are not requiring any additional parking for the food trucks.
Thank you.
any other questions for staff? Thanks again.
Ryan? Ryan? Yeah, I have one. Jackie, in most instances, you note that the approval for this will be a special use permit. Under what conditions could staff say no to a special use permit for this purpose? Is it like conditional use permits, which are legally required to be provided unless there is a significant issue for a property?
They don't have the same requirements from the state in terms of conditional uses. However, though, I believe our code does say if the proposed special use can meet all of our built-in requirements, then the city will issue the permit.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other questions? for staff?
Oh, yeah. One other thing I could mention too is it was brought to our attention this week that Lake Lawn has a number of food trucks that kind of operate differently than I would say food trucks you see in commercial districts in the city of Delavan. And so we're looking at ways we can accommodate those food trucks, because I think food trucks in a resort context are really different than food trucks on private property in business districts and kind of in areas where there's more traffic and other things like that. So we're looking at potentially making changes to allow for maybe one review of Lake Lawn to have their food trucks just looked at once, rather than having them come for a conditional use permit for all of their food trucks. One thought I had was that we could potentially exempt our resort land uses larger than, let's just say, 5 acres from this ordinance, so that this ordinance would really apply to more typical commercial development. So I'd be interested in the commission's thoughts on that. And I'm happy to restate that too, if anyone didn't follow.
More clear and question, any thoughts?
Makes sense.
Thanks.
So if the commission's comfortable with that, then I'd suggest we make that change to exempt large-scale resorts from this text, and I can make that change.
So to clarify that, Jackie, you would suggest that there be a T, QRST, and that there would be a provision that would be added there?
Oh, yeah, right. Adding a final requirement at the end of the list, which would be after letter S, it'd be letter T, to exempt large scale, it'd be commercial indoor lodging from this ordinance.
Any other questions? Everyone's clear on that? Then I would, again, we're in a public hearing, so at this point of the meeting, I would ask if there's anyone in attendance that's either in favor or against this proposal, and if you'd like to speak at this time on this item, just come up and state your name and have it on the record.
Hello, Dave Securis, 551 Southwind Drive, Lake Geneva, but also here representing Lake Lawn Resort. So when I read when I read about this ordinance and I saw the release and the agenda, I did reach out to the city staff and the city planner. So it was great. They had responded to a couple of questions I have, so I want to thank them for that. I did not see this when it was on the meetings previously in November or December. But my concern was exactly what kind of Jackie reiterated, but a little bit more background and detail on that. I can understand that this ordinance would be in place for the nuisance factor with properties that are in close proximity to each other. Lake Lawn is pretty much landlocked there with the lake on one side. There's not the neighbors that are really seeing the operation there, but literally the definition of like the food trucks, whether it is a beverage cart on the golf course that we also have go through the resort, whether it is frozen treats on a cart that goes around the resort, whether it is a tiki bar that we set up, different odds and ends that we would have for food and beverage on bicycles and different just things throughout the resort, let alone the weddings, the special events that we do. We would literally, if there was not the exclusion for Lake Lawn, we would literally have to get hundreds of different permits or an overall condition to allow that to be at different places of the resort, because a lot of them are not in fixed locations. Not all of them are private. Some are open to the public. We'll have different events. As you know, we have the car show event at the airport, which is part of the resort operations, or we have other events at the resort that we do invite the public out. We have lakeside cookouts. So all these types of things, we would be constantly running into trouble if we had to kind of follow along with that type of ordinance. The time on there of operations to 11 p.m., that's another thing. We often go with some of those events could go to midnight or a little bit later, but again, they're not disturbing other residents because of the close proximity. There is none that are close by. So there is just a lot of things in there. So if there is some gray area, I don't want to have those restrictions that would really put a cumbersome situation on our type of operation for what we typically do at the resort, the service, different groups, family reunions, corporate events, everything. So if the exclusion, the resort type operations covers it, then I'm okay. Otherwise, I would ask that it's postponed for another month on the vote to approve or deny until we can make sure that that is covered. Like I said, we have lots of situations almost daily throughout the year. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak at this time during this public hearing? Either for or against the item 4.1 we're on? If not, I would close the public hearing and move on to item 4.2, which is consider a proposed zoning ordinance amendment to create section 13-3-206, grant for parents paid for parent Z, food and beverage vehicle carts and stands, add said use as a special use to the BRB, LBC, and ML zoning districts in section 13-2-405 and the table 13-3-203 tables of land uses. Care to make a motion?
Question, how do we propose to include in this motion the just previously discussed exclusion? If we don't have that language.
I think this is based on kind of what was stated at the meeting and will be added to the other conditions that are already there, but if staff wants to help
If you're
facilitate the.
asking a procedural question, I think you would
Yeah.
make it a motion to add that to the proposed amendment. The language I had suggested was in indoor commercial lodging land uses of greater than 5 acres would be exempt from the food trucks ordinance.
You got that, Andy?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a further discussion. Not all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 5 is a public hearing to review and possible recommendation, again, City of Delavan. 5.1 is a public hearing on a request to consider proposed zoning ordinance amendments to section 13-2-105, F, parent 2, parent F, land uses which are prohibited to delete vape shop sales or services, and to add vape shop sales or service to section 13-2-105, parent F, parent 2, parent G, land uses which are limited, and to modify table 13-3-203, tables of land uses to show those changes again to the applicant, the City of Delavan. With that, I would open the public hearing and invite staff to start us off.
Hello again. So this is regarding vape shops in the downtown. So this is a little bit of a technical issue, in addition to a policy issue. This basically started because the state changed its licensing requirements for vaping device, sale of vaping devices versus sale of tobacco products. And so previously, those were all combined into one license. Now that they're two different licenses, staff's becoming more aware of when vapes being proposed and when it's tobacco products being proposed, which eventually led to realization that in the downtown we have very unusual language regarding tobacco sales and vaping product sales, which is really different than any other district in the zoning code. And as a result, some vape shops were approved in the downtown where they actually were not technically allowed to be approved. Currently, our code allows for a limited amount of tobacco and smoking equipment sales. If it's 25% or less of the floor area, you can, in the downtown, that is allowed for tobacco products. But for vape shops, those are fully prohibited. And so, as I said before, some licenses were issued in error for some vape shops just because this is kind of unusual and it only exists in the business central zoning district. So staff took another look at that. First of all, we're a little unhappy with the way it's listed in the code because it is different from how the rest of our zoning districts work, and I can explain more about that to anyone who's interested. But we also felt that really treating vape shops differently from tobacco shops didn't seem right to us, in the sense that they don't have different impacts on the community. In other parts of the city, we treat them the same, so it's a little unusual to treat them differently in the downtown. So staff's recommendation would be to change the vape shop rules to match those for the tobacco shop rules. So that would allow them to be permitted on a limited basis up to 25% of the floor area in the store. That would be easier for staff to enforce as well, and would help those licenses that have been issued in error. Happy to answer any questions. It can be a little complicated about once you start talking about how it's regulated outside of the downtown, but I'm happy to go there if you guys are interested.
Yes, Will.
Jackie, does this, would this currently conform to whatever the state has decided they're going to do?
I think so, because the state is just requiring different licenses.
Actually, vape shops never were licensed in the past, and in July it changed so that now they are. So people can apply for a cigarette, cigar, and vape license. It used to be that they weren't licensed at all. So there were places in the downtown that were selling vapes because they never needed a license before, that they shouldn't have been because the
zoning code doesn't allow.
The zoning code says they shouldn't, but they have been for years.
Got it. Thanks for that clarification. So this would not be in conflict with state law.
Thank you, Will. Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Jackie. Anyone in the public that wishes to speak either in favor or against this issue at this time, I would invite you to come up and state your name and address for the record, if there's anyone that wishes to comment at this time. Seeing and hearing none, I would go ahead then and close the public hearing and move on to item number 5.2, which is considered a proposed zoning ordinance amendment to section 13-2 -105, parent 3, parent F, 2, F, land uses which are prohibited, to delete vape shop sales or service and to add vape shop sales or services to section 13-2-105, parent 3, parent F, parent 2, point G, land uses which are limited, and to modify table 13-3-203, tables of land uses to show those changes. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend as written.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 6, business 6.1 is consider exterior sign installation in the downtown historical overlay district for 310 East Walworth Avenue within the downtown design overlay zoning district. And you want to make the motion? Okay.
Question, in looking at the illustration that was provided in the packet. Gee, this sign is not, the letters in the sign, how are they lit?
I do have, I believe the applicant is here today. Is the applicant in the room? Okay, I thought he was gonna be here, so I'll let him answer.
I know we have some issues about.
Yeah, so they are, each individual letter's lit, on the, I'm not sure what page that is, but they show what it's lit at night. I don't know if you have, yeah, so it's each letter's individually lit, which our code does allow, so. Really, this is a pretty, straightforward, signage, but it is in the downtown, so I did have it come before you, based upon our code requirements, so.
So the lighting is in conformance with.
Correct, yep.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Yeah, so T, I think the only, I mean, and it's a common exception, and in the minutes that we just approved, we noted that we've been making this exception pretty consistently, that the sign ordinance doesn't allow sign construction out of plastic, in this case acrylics, but that we've been making exceptions for it as long as the acrylic and the style of sign seem to conform appropriately in the downtown district. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so in this case, that's about the only exception we're really making, in my mind. So,
Yeah,
because we've approved backlit single letters because it's in the ordinance.
correct, yep, and then the raceway that those letters are on, in the back, they're made to match the background, so I don't really see any issues with it.
Right. Well, thank you for asking our perspective.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin. With that, you care to make a motion?
Move to approve the proposed signs for 310 East Walworth Avenue as submitted.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item 6.3 is review and discussion of the concept plans for a revision to the planned infill development at 2400 East Geneva Street, Delavan Resort to include
Excuse me.
residential land uses. And again, just so we're all.
Excuse me. Excuse me,
Oh, sorry. Yes, Kevin.
did we skip 6.2?
I'm so excited to get to 6.3. I apologize. Forgive me. Thanks, Kevin. Item 6.2 is, I even have my readers on tonight, so there's no excuse. Consider a single lot land consolidation request by Certified Survey Map, CSM, to combine the single tax parcel of 404 East Wallet Avenue.
Mr. Mayor, in your packet, you have a proposed certified survey map, which would combine the existing parcels that are there for the library that have been acquired over the years into one single tax parcel.
Any questions for staff?
I would,
So is a motion, is there a second? Kevin, second? Any
I'm
further?
happy to second it.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Now, item 6.3, review and discussion of the concept plans for the revision of the planned infill development at 2400 East Geneva Street, Lake Lawn Resort, to include proposed residential land uses. And a couple of you walked in. Again, thank you all for joining us this evening. Just to be clear, you've seen some public comments at some earlier agenda items. You've seen some recommendations. This one is review and discussion only. And with that, the review and the discussion amongst committee members and the petitioners tonight, this is the first step of several. There'll be many more meetings and opportunities for public comments, that don't hesitate to reach out to all of us and your elected representatives in the meantime during the process, should we continue beyond tonight. With that, got the petitioners here, and I'll let you start things off.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Zirk. I'm here on behalf of Fairwind Development. Brian Pollard from Fairwind is with me, as well as Dave Sakaris from the resort. We have an exhibit we'd like to hand out that's maybe will make things a little easier to follow as I walk my way through this.
It's the same that's online.
Same, pretty much. We're here this evening on behalf of Fairwind, who will be the developer, builder of the project, as we were in the other phases of Harbor Club. We're here to present a conceptual plan for phase 4 of what we call Harbor Club, and also a townhome area north of phase 4 that the resort has set aside for future, and we'll talk about that a little farther in here. As the mayor said, I appreciate the introduction. We're here to solicit input, both from the council in a few weeks and this plan commission this evening, to see what ideas you have based on the presentation we're going to make. And as I said, Dave handed out something that'll hopefully be a little easier to follow along than as we work our way through this. The area of development is along North Shore Drive. It's a very southwest portion of the resort. Currently, it has portions of the golf course on it. Dave can explain a little bit more what's going to be happening with that. The proposed area 4, which is a single family area, is designed to mirror exactly phase 1, 2, 3 of Harbor Club, which they'll be consistent in both design, land use, and a housing product that'll all be exactly what we're looking to do. We're not looking to deviate from what we've done, which has been obviously very successful to date. Again, the big portion of what we're doing here is the resort community concept, which we've explained to the council in the past. This is not a traditional neighborhood. It's a facility and a concept which people obviously have been buying into very well, where folks have second homes, those types of things, where they come here for the weekends, for the portions of the summer. And then those facilities are also available to the resort. Some homeowners choose to join the rental program, others don't. But it gives the resort an extra opportunity for additional leases of homes. If somebody comes in, doesn't want just a room, they can get a home. I think that's a big part of the concept for the more of a townhome development. Hopefully you get these things more into additional renting facilities for the resort. To let's say the resort be more successful. Obviously, the more places they have and the higher price spaces they have to rent, the better off the resort is. And I'd like to touch on the land use restrictions. Roughly, I did some math on here just so everybody's in the same page. The 18.8 acre single family development area results in a gross density of around 1.96 dwelling units per acre. And in the 8.75 acre area, they've identified for 60 townhomes, which would back into a dwelling unit count of about 6.87, which is certainly less dense than many townhome developments are in most townhome developments. One thing I do want to point out, it's a little hard to see, is my red lines I drew on here. They're not necessarily to scale the lines, but the 75 feet of frontage along the lake is not included in the development area. Just like we did in the other phases, the resort owns and maintains all the frontage of the lake, that it's not private, that is not residential, single family home or town HOA property, that is still owned by the resort. And is obviously, Dave may be able to expand on a little further, is the resort golf course is going to require some modification. They have some plans, quite honestly, of modifying the golf course to do things that better suit them, which has resulted in the land being available, not the other way around. They have some goals on what they want to do with the resort, which has made the land available to help pay for some of that stuff. We've done a lot more work on this than just concept plan approval. We're more in an advanced stage of concept approval, because as you know, with this property, there's challenges and limitations and all types of things that have happened on that property over many, many years, dating back to Indians, that we need to understand and work around. So we have spent the time, I mean, as you've seen in the pack, we've got to the detail where we've made sure the roads are of adequate size and adequate design to accommodate fire truck movement. So we're beyond just a standard concept plan at this time in our due diligence. We have done soil testing out there to make sure that the land and the soil suitable for the home construction. We begin the archaeological preservation studies to make sure that we're not impacting any archaeological sites that may be on the site, as everybody knows, the resort has many archaeological sites that Dave has to work around. And fortunately for me, this isn't going to be an area that has a lot of archaeological sites. We've done environmental corridor analysis for the primary environmental corridor. That was easy for me to say earlier. Primary environmental corridor is protected, and that's going to be in that 75-foot area. We're actually, based on changing things as we did in the other phases from golf course and those types of uses to that 75-foot buffer where we've been done groundwater recharge, portions of our stormwater management. We've concentrated more in our design in phases 1 through 3, and in this phase we'll continue the same philosophy of not focusing on creating detention ponds, holding water and releasing it right into the lake like a traditional neighborhood would be. These plans have been working with sewer pack, have involved rain gardens, groundwater recharge facilities, native planting areas where the waters that run from the home sites go into these areas where they'll provide, again, groundwater recharge. The plants there will help filter out a lot of the pesticides, fertilizers, and things that would normally have made their way into the lake and have made their way into the lake for a long amount of time. Those are help being filtered out so that the quality of the lake water, the water entering the lake is better than it has been. And I think the proof in that's always in the pudding. And I think the mayor can probably attest, we've had plenty of groups watching what we're doing. We had a local stormwater erosion group that was actually flying drones over our sites, looking at our sites, and have been very complimentary in the way that we've had handled stormwater management on the site during the construction process to make sure we're not negatively impacting the lake with our construction activities. That's important to us. And I think, again, the proof has been in the pudding. What we've done has been very successful to date. And as part of the process, we've also reviewed utilities. We understand regional utilities are available for the community. We have determined that a regional lift station will be developed as part of this property, where we'll be providing a lift station that will be serve this property, things that the resorts can do in other properties in the area. So as the community grows further, there's going to be a lift station provided to make the rest of that expansion easier, and that's being done as part of our project. And one thing I do want to point out, that this project does not increase the number of boat slips or the opportunity for a number of boat slips by 1. There are 0 new boat slips approved as part of this project, and the resort is not going to be allowed to have more boat slips because of this project. So I just want to be very clear on that. And then again, stormwater management of this project is a focus of what we've done in phases 1, 2, and 3, and will continue to be a focus of our development plan going forward. Timing of what we're looking to do is obviously somewhat sales dependent. We have been very successful in phases 1 through 3 of Harbor Club. I would, at this point, looking forward, suggest that earthwork, those types of preliminary development work would probably not be able to be started till late 2025. Final improvements, paving the roads in this area, probably a 2026 endeavor. Again, that's somewhat sales dependent. Phase 3 is currently open for sales. I'd like to hold off until the sales in that area are exhausted or close to being exhausted before we open another area and make, additional lots available. This question I always get asked, so I'll head it off and I'll answer it up front. Currently, of the 84 lots that were parts of phase 1 through 3, I believe as of today, we have 53 sales. When we first met with the city, we projected 2 sales per month, about 48 per year. So starting, I think around February of 2023, we've sold 53. So we're a little beyond we've exceeded our projected sales of 2 dwelling units a month or 2 homes a month. So we're a little bit ahead of schedule. So I would anticipate, based on the interest we have at this point in phase 3, we would be on schedule to have, all but maybe 10 lots sold at the end of this year, which puts us in the need to have these lots on the ground and available for 2026. As I said, part of what we look at is our place in the community. We still believe this to be a strong, very strong, higher end residential market. We have, I think we've proven ourselves to be able to provide strong sales tax benefits to the community, to the schools, all the other taxing bodies, and quite honestly, with a very minimal, if any, impact on the services you provide other than water and sewer. Our streets are plowed by our HOA. We have all of our amenities. Folks aren't burdening your schools. Folks aren't burdening your parks. And we're providing an opportunity for the community and the region to gain sales tax without the need to put out a lot of services to support the people who own those homes. Also, I think we've done our part in the TID. When we first came here, the TID was a bit of a burden that was, considerable burden for us to make sure we hit the ground running and were able to get homes in place and sales tax generated to offset the TID. Make sure there wasn't that didn't fall to the community, and I think we've done that. I think, at least as how I understand at this point, we've generated enough property tax receipts to do that. And from a selfish perspective for the resort, this provides the resort a good stream of income to allow them to do some of the improvements they want to do over time. They have big plans on things they want to do in that facility, and everything from golf course improvements to convention center. I mean, Dave can speak to that better than I can, but this provides them the opportunity to make those improvements, which we see as a big benefit to the region as well. So that's kind of what I was going to say. Dave's going to straighten out everything I said wrong, and then we'll offer ourselves for questions.
All right, thank you, Rick. So when we were looking at this project and what we had done in the Harbor Club, a number of resorts in the Midwest really struggle if they do not have an abundance of indoor amenities, whether that be a conference center, whether that be a water park, whether that be some of those indoor type of things. And the reason for that is we all know in the Midwest, all the vacationers and the travel comes in the summer, the resort makes money in 3-4 months, and then you go through 8 months of losing money. And the development that we did at the Harbor Club, part of that was to help that situation financially. We had people that are neighbors that could come over, they could eat in the restaurant in the off season. They could come and use the spa. We would have a few golf members. We'd have some people to be able to rent some of the available slips that we had at the marina. And so this is something that has happened in a number of resorts in Wisconsin of doing this type of residential development. And as Rick mentioned, anyone that would go into a rental program, just like we have the Harbor Club, right now we only have 2 out of 40 some that have closed that are in the rental program. And so that would be additional room tax that would be coming to the city. And it'd be the same thing with this type of development. If anyone wanted to rent it out, it would not just be a free-for-all. It would be managed by Lake Lawn Resort because they would have access to the Lake Lawn Resort amenities. So in looking at this, this is not by any means a demise of the golf course operation. The golf course operation is extremely important to the resort. If we look at the entire layout of the golf course, where this is proposed to take place does directly affect about 3 of the holes on the golf course. But there is some substantial space between holes at this location that previously was not utilized. So it's taking advantage of some of that open space, but everyone knows who golfs. You have different tee markers. You usually have, for the more experienced golfer, you have the tee marker, then you got the average, and then you have kind of a beginner marker of where somebody would tee off. Our goal here is to redesign this course to still maintain 18 holes, but have it designed almost in the aspect of 2 separate 9 holes. So we have a 1 9-hole course that would be a little bit more challenging, and you wouldn't be losing much yardage on that at all. And then we would have another smaller course, which would be smaller yardage on some of those holes and more of a chip and putt type of a situation, which we feel would be very advantageous to locals, taking advantage of some of that smaller gameplay and also being able to circulate more golfers and get them experience to that. So we're working with a golf designer to lay that out and take advantage of the remaining acres or of what we have left there on the site plan. And Rick mentioned there was some of this unused space. Like I said, it's affecting 3 holes. There would be some redesign of some other holes throughout the course. So there would be additional design taking place on some other holes. And when we look at what's needed to support the golf course over time, right now we have an irrigation system that is over 50 years old. It's a very, very expensive system to replace all that throughout the golf course. We have the cart paths that were put in 30 years ago that are in need of repair. We have a number of dead trees, completely dead. So in this whole proposal of this development, we'd be putting together a whole golf cart course plan that would re-elevate that and have that something very exciting for the public and the resort guests to come and utilize. If we're looking at the different amenities that we have at the resort, none of that is impacted other than these homeowners taking advantage of some of those things and having it part of the resort style community. Rick already mentioned, it does not change any increase in the number of slips that we have. I'm trying to go by a couple of comments that I've heard online and socially to try to address those. So there's been some concern about additional lake activity on the lake. Frankly, the Show Dean development that's right on F could actually lead to a lot more. I know it's out of the city, but a lot more use of the lake than these number of units here. They would have the same right as anybody to use the public launch that we would have. So whether a development took place here or development took place a half mile or 2 miles down the road, it would be the exact same impact to the lake. Rick already addressed the water quality that you mentioned. We've had a number of different agencies come out, and what we've done at the Harbor Club that is well underway already is having all those retention ponds and really kind of cleaning up that area. And I think we all agree when somebody drives into Delavan, it's one of the first beautiful areas that they see on the east side of coming into Delavan is the Harbor Club development. And having that come in is, I think, has really elevated the entire community. So just a couple of more points I want to point out, and then we'd be available for questions there.
Any questions? As you, I guess I could start with a few. You did cover a lot, and you threw a lot, and obviously this is the first step in many different steps before you get to a general development plan and a precise implementation plan, where again, the public can provide us more comments at those times. But I think you did cover a lot, but it was a lot. And we'll get through that more specifically, some of those. But to begin with, you talked about some of the timeline. I think it was more for the 18.8 acres when I heard, roads being paved and that sort of thing. What do you, and obviously I think everyone's been surprised at how the timeline was proposed for the current development, and it's shortened because of things moving a lot faster than anyone thought in that area. So what would you say potentially for the entire future development, including the 18.75 acres? Should you do that? What timeline over? And again, it's subject to sales.
Yeah, well,
The economy and.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say.
I just want to say there would be no impact to the golf course operations during this year, 2025 season in that type of proposal. And Rick can speak to more of when potentially groundbreaking would be through various approvals and when sales could start.
Yeah, as I said earlier, a lot of this is, as you said, sales dependent. We've exceeded our projections a little bit, so we're here a little bit quicker than we thought we would be. But again, I think we'd be looking to do, if everything stayed the way it is, and if things progress as we thought they would, at the end of this year, you see us out there, we like to work through the winter. If we get some of the base groundwork done, crews could work over the winter in conjunction with the development of the redesign of the golf course. Both these have to kind of go hand in hand, not just because of us getting out of their way. Obviously a golf course is a huge component of what the resort does, and we can't just throw a hand grenade in it and tell them, hang on, we'll see you next year. It's got to work hand in hand. And the site balance is a big part of it. We're going to be moving dirt from site to site to create some of the things they need. They're going to need our dirt. We're going to need some of what they do. So the balance is going to be important. So I would still like to see us late this year be in a position, if sales dictate to start, obviously cleaning up in the spring, getting the roads paved so we're out of their way for the next golf season. And then the other portion, which so from a development perspective, if ideally we go through the concept plan approval, come back and later this month to see the council. We've done a lot of the work up front on a GDP level, and not for any reason other than we need to know. It's difficult to come here and say we want to do this if we don't know that the soils are going to be right, that we're not going to run into archaeological problems. So we've done a lot of due diligence before we got here. So we could move pretty quickly through the GDP plan compilation phase, and then be in sometime spring with the GDP, late summer with the PIP, and then that would be the ultimate. That would be if everything fell in place. Obviously, when we hit roadblocks, things happen, things delay, but we'd certainly like to be in place to be able to, if we need it, to start the dirt work, the excavation work in the late fall.
One other question I have, I guess, what maybe have you learned under the current development that you would have maybe change or do differently, or maybe you haven't, maybe everything would be exactly the same. I'm just curious if there's something that you learned or you came across in the current development that's being completed that would maybe be different, or the homes and the concept would be much the same or different, or.
I think the product has been very well received. Obviously, people spending, we've had sales out there in the nearly $2 million. I think realistically, it's a little higher than we expected it to be. And I think that $2 million number is about where the market is, and the homes along the lake, the ones closer to the road, kind of hit our projection, that upper 700, 800,000. That has been the only thing I think we have changed in our own mindset is when we came into this, we weren't quite sure a project. So we made the lots in the first phase a little bigger. I hate to use the word lot, but the building pads in the first phase, we made a little bit bigger, not knowing exactly where we'd have to stretch. Phase 3, we made those more fit the product. In phase 4, they're gonna more fit the houses we've been selling, simply because we learned that is the product. We try to give ourselves some room at the beginning to adjust product the way I do, but our 3,000 square foot home, 3,200 square foot home, whatever it is, in Nantucket out there has been very well received. I mean, that's been our best seller out there. And as I said, we've had sales nearing $2 million out there with, I think we have one listed on a resale for over $2 million right now. Somebody bought it and speculated on it and made it a home run for themselves there, but you know, they're over $2 million. So that has been very well received, but for our products perspective and sales, it's kind of going as we expected, maybe a tad bit faster.
One of the changes, and I know we went through it quickly, was the plan would be for these to have larger garages. And the main thing for that would be a lot of these people being close to the golf course would probably need extra space for golf carts, et cetera. So that's being put into this plan.
Yeah, I think one other thing, Dave said that, but in our original plans, we did have set aside areas for golf carts, but we do have 3-car garage options on these plans, which we didn't have in the other phase. That's a good catch. It completely got by me. And then the other thing we've worked on and we're trying to do is make the driveways as long as we possibly can. So when people have guests over, we have adequate parking. Right now in phases 1, 2, and 3, we have the clubhouse that's being built with a ton of overflow parking. So we'll work into that, trying to provide a little more on-site parking and additional garage space in these homes where we don't have the immediate availability of the golf course, the clubhouse, excuse me. We'll park in the golf course.
Maybe you could speak to current, as it relates to the current development, what if any local contractors are you using? And soon they are, and would imagine that if a development like this went through, that you would continue with that, but maybe you could speak to local trades, other businesses that.
You know, off the top of my head, Foremost Electric out of Lake Geneva, Adams Plumbing, Halverson Garage Doors. Sure, there's somebody else I'm missing, but those are the 3 that popped into my head right away. The 3 of the bigger ones.
There's a number of employees that live in the Delavan area that are employed by those contractor groups. So even though it may be a company outside of Delavan area, it is positively affecting the employment of several of the residents in Delavan.
And it does sound like obviously you've done due diligence with some of your studies and all that stuff. Can you more specifically speak to potential Native American, and as you said, the archaeological studies of it? So, and I mean, again, there'll be time to get into it even more specifically but just I know that was some of the current, and rightfully so, understandably so, some of the comments that I saw. And if you could speak to that, whether it was with the current development and what you would be looking at and how you would deal with that.
Sure. Right now, from the State Historical Society and the documents that we've all received from them over their studies over the years, decades of the entire Lake Lawn property, most of the intact, undisturbed burial mounds are around the main resort buildings, around the water tower, around the existing conference center, around the lodge buildings, in the center courtyard. That is where a number of those current areas are. Over by the marina area where we did that development, that area was scraped and checked prior to development. We went through all those tests and they all came back clean. And there is an area, I would say, I'm estimating here, probably 8 acres. It's not this parcel of listed as 8 acres, but it's a different 8 acres that overlays with these 2. That's an uncategorized area from the state. And so we're working with the different agencies to come out and do their test in that area, just like we had done at the marina area prior to any ground disruption and even through the beginning stages of the ground disruption process. But there is no identified burial areas that are protected in the golf course area on the west side of the main entrance drive.
And
If we could get a Facebook post up where we're just gonna move the headstones, kind of like in Poltergeist, we could.
Oh, no, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry about
Next
that.
question. I was gonna. Oh, one thing that I know, and again, I know we'll see more specific plans as the process, if it continues to move forward on the rain gardens that you talked about, that you currently did in the current development. But maybe you could talk, and I know it'd probably be more from a Lake Lawn standpoint, what you've been doing for the betterment of the lake, or what your plans would be to continue the betterment of the lake, as working with the developer and things like that. What you've done with the current development that's in place, and if there's anything.
Yes, yes. So obviously the lifeblood of this entire Lake Lawn Resort and of Delavan is the lake. So we try everything to be the great stewards of the lake. We contribute to Lakeside Betterment Fund. We, the previous land before the development at the Harbor Club just had complete runoff for a number of years, and getting that cleaned up with the Harbor Club development did exactly that. We, over the years, Lake Lawn has a weed harvester. And so we hire 3 employees a year to go up and down the whole area and doing our part to clean the lake, clean it of debris, clean it of garbage that possibly boaters would have tossed in the lake or that have blown in the lake, to keep that clean. We work with the DNR on proper applications that would keep the lake clean and take care of any sediment or any chemicals, or doing our part to avoid any of the green algae blooms and keeping that clean. That's the last thing we want from not only a resort perspective, but also for the township perspective and the enjoyment of everyone around the lake. So those are just to name a few, and that's continually ongoing.
I know I've asked a number of questions. Any other questions? Committee members? Kevin?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a number of them if you want me to just go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a reference in the memo that says, as the overall property has previously removed the maximum 10% of the primary environmental corridor on the property with the development of the Harbor Club and the Marina parking lot, these redevelopments do not have any allowance to disturb further corridor areas. And so it looks like the setbacks to the homes protect the primary environmental corridor, as was pointed out, right? There is a point at the end of it looked like to me, and I'm working off of the material provided to us. It looked like there was a spot at the end of the cul-de-sac that was pretty close to that large primary environmental corridor in the middle, but I couldn't see the lines clearly enough. Do you have that?
It is part of the reason why at the end of what you would call like almost the peninsula of that development on the far northern east side is why it's carved out a little bit more there.
Okay. So there is no encroachment of the primary environmental corridor there, right? And it looked like to me, and so if you could help me with this, right? It looked like to me that in fact, implementing this plan, because you eliminate the lakeside hole as part of this program and put in the rain garden and respect the primary environmental corridor, that we actually are moving back off the lake for is that correct?
Yes.
75.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at least the 75 feet.
Right.
Is moved off the lake, and obviously the buildable area is even farther back than that.
Right. Now, if the staff could just make sure in the future also that we identify what the present zoning of this area is when we get to the proposal, I'd appreciate it. you guys provided, my next question is, there seemed to be some confusion in some of the public comments, both in emails that the city received and in social media about the location of this development versus non-developed areas in the area. I mean, in the resort area. All of this, as I looked at it, actually is on what you guys would describe as the golf course area, right?
This entire area is currently used for golf course.
Right, okay. You guys gave the total density for the single family and the initial thoughts on the townhome area. But my question was, how does that density compare to the eastern section of the Harbor Club? And I know you can't do it based on total acreage because there's the basins and areas over there that would be counted somewhat differently. But I'm asking, like, along the streetscape, are we using the same kind of density feel as Harbor Club, the eastern portion of Harbor Club?
Yes, it's less dense overall, but the streetscape will look exactly, which if you went through phases 1 and 2, Harbor Color,
right.
they would look the same.
You noted that the designs that you're going to be using in phase 4 are the same as designs for 1, 2, and 3, with the exception of some garage alterations. It looked like on the overall property layout that these were larger. Is that just is
wider than
I think they're wider because a typical home in phase 1, 2, and 3 would be probably 40 foot of face of the garage. We add 10 feet for the third car garage option, so that would make the pad a little wider.
Right. Now, I'm sorry. Thank you. And I'm sorry that I'm not there and the communication might not be great, but I apologize. But the plan is still no yards, right? That the owners of the facilities actually own the parcels up to their home lines, right? And the maintenance of the green areas falls within the homeowners association. Same plan, right?
Exactly.
So the homeowners association would be in control of landscape maintenance, all of the fertilization or any other kind of activity. So it would be a very controlled environment, like the resort itself, right?
Yep, as well as snow removal, those types of things that you mentioned, yes.
One of my questions was on the golf course, but you're coming back with the plan for the golf course in a minute. Similar plan for this section as there was for phase 1, 2, and 3, that the developer is responsible for the internal street development, right? Just like you've installed them, so we don't have any additional municipal expense for that stuff. And we're using an existing curb cut that had been designed at one point a long time ago as a proposed entrance for the resort. So that is correct. That's good. Now, as it pertains to that entry, you don't have a plan for that entry to add light control or anything like that. It'll just be a stop sign on the way out, right?
Correct. We don't meet warrant pay at a signalized intersection, from my understanding from the design engineer.
Right. And you guys reinforced no adjustment to the marina, but my question is, if I'm a purchaser of a home in this section, obviously one of the appeals is going to be some kind of lake access, right? So what is the marketing package provided to a potential owner if he or she says, I'd be willing to buy a house here, but I want some guaranteed lake access, or I want a spot in a marina. Do you still have any marina spots to market?
Yeah, so the development in phase 1 and 2 of the existing Harvard Club is 84 units.
84 total.
84. And so these individuals would have rights every single year to have a slip in the marina. We have those existing slips. Some of them are rented just by transient. This would be now rented by somebody living here if they chose to.
So they would.
Currently,
Go ahead. I'm sorry,
of
Dave.
the ones that have sold or closed in the Harbor Club, we are seeing a ratio of maybe 30% that have requests for seasonal boat slips. It's
Okay,
again, it's
great.
not adding any more boat slips, it's just changing out with somebody else that has one.
Great. Great. Then, Ryan, I'm almost done. I do think that the one thing I'm not clear on is the plan for the 8.8 acres, which identifies a potential of 60 additional units. You've referred to it as the townhome section. Is that a Lake Lawn Resort development, or is it going to be similar to the similar to Harbor Club in the same entity?
It will be part of Harbor Club, part of the developer. Just like the phase 3 at the very far east side of the Harbor Club was originally designed to be townhomes. And based on the request of buyers, that was changed back to single family. It could very well be that same thing for this proposed area here.
So in the general development plan, the next phase, are you planning to ask or share the layout for that? I'm going to call it triangle of 8.8 acres.
I'd like to have Dave on the record as saying that I was as fair when we're going to be building it. So that's good news for me here. But the reality is we put part of this together simply because we wanted to come in and not piecemeal this area. This one of the things we heard from staff is we want to understand what's happening out here. Don't bring a piece and then a piece and then a piece in. So we put this area, block this area out because that's a vision that the resort has, is to have some multifamily there that they can then lease out. Hopefully it'll be a better percentage of leasers in there or people willing to lease. But we also, if we brought into one piece, we want everybody to understand what the building blocks were. So when this comes back in pieces, we plan on doing a GDP just for the single family. The resort can then come back and do the GDP, or we can do a GDP on the townhomes. The other thing is, this is going to require, and you touched on it earlier, a change in zoning from the existing zoning to a more zoning classification that proposes what we're going to do. So as staff has laid this out for us, the process is multi-tiered in getting this approach. The first step is bringing a concept before both of the bodies to make sure they're comfortable with what we're proposing. Once that happens, we'll fall back. We'll have the public hearings on the rezoning of the property. Once that's in place, then we can submit the GDPs after that.
This area was shown on the map because when I come back with the proposed design for the golf course alteration, we would be pulling golf course operation out of that additional triangle space that you identified. So we don't have to come back, like Rick said, and have another change, trying to do this all at once and what the future plans may be.
So if I could, and part of the whole purpose of this meeting is to provide plan commission feedback or member feedback to you guys. And so I think it's important to have, even if you're not making the request for that at the same time you're doing the GDP for the single family, I think it's important just similar to the way phase three was laid out, even though we were only preparing for phase one and two, a sense of how conceptually you think the road would work, and also a sense of what those structures would look like. I mean, because we're basically talking about a total of almost I guess almost 100 units in that 27-acre spot. Okay, so I would just suggest that whether you're going to make that recommendation or not, that you do that. And my last question and point gets to your comment about piecemealing this. And I appreciate this as an addition to the work on the overall resort property, but the basically similarly related parties hold land to the west of this across North Shore, and to the north across Highway 50. And so at some point, and particularly for this development, I think it would be helpful for the commission to get some sense, Dave, conceptually, of what you guys might be thinking across the street from this. And then as you bring in the golf course discussion, if any of it in the future, impacts anything north of 50, or we're talking about additional resort amenity provided potential development north of 50, it would be helpful to see that in the not too distant future too. Brian, I don't have any other comments or questions.
Thanks. Any other questions? Yes, Will.
Kind of springboarding off something that Kevin brought up, and a number of years ago, kind of direct this towards staff, there was a concept of putting in a new entrance exit for the resort properties onto North Shore. A lot of resources were committed to doing that. Where do we stand on that, and how would this proposal potentially impact it?
So that proposal dating back maybe 20, 25 years.
I've been around.
Yeah.
Yeah, both of us
You
have.
can
Well,
see, me
we
too.
remember there was a nickname for the road too, which we won't need to repeat now.
That was to change the whole drive and have what I recall entrance coming through that whole area from the west side of the property. Currently, the way that the resort is set up and the additional disturbance that would do to the golf course operation, and more or less the safety and security too of the resort, people would be driving past all the lodge buildings, other parking lots before they would get to the registration area. It doesn't feasibly work out in the best interest of the overall operations of the resort and having people come in from that area. Just like the Harbor Club on the east side is a gated area to and from the resort access, to try not to have resort guests just driving around in the Harbor Club area. It could still happen because they can come off of Highway 50, but it's to try to minimize that a little bit. It would be similar to this. We want this to be kind of a standalone, but they would be able to take their golf cart to the rest of the resort facility, but not drive a vehicle to.
I understand what you're saying, and I understand from a marketing standpoint why you would prefer to build houses than major roads to conduct traffic in and out of the resort. I don't think that addresses the original concern, and that is the current access to the reserve property is, in a word, dangerous. It's difficult to get in and out of there, it's dangerous to get in and out of there. It's only gonna get worse with all of the development that's going on, in our community. Maybe to cut through this, my question is, again, some of this is for staff. What do we propose to do to make that area a safer area and an easier area for people to get in and out of?
If I can add right before the staff, is a number of things that have been done already has drastically decreased that activity coming from the front entrance. Previously, everyone that was launching a boat or bringing their boat in came in through that front main entrance off of 50. Everything that we did at the Harbor Club and adding the stoplight at F in that development has minimized that traffic through the front entrance with longer vehicles, trailers bringing in boats. That all comes through that way of what we've developed there. This area down here, with this development on the golf course, these individuals would not be coming through the front entrance of the resort off of Highway 50 either. And that's why we wanted to avoid a complete crossover road to and from that development.
I think, Will, one of the things that the city has in the long-range plans is a traffic signal at the entrance, the current entrance at Lake Lawn, where the airport access is. That is part of the city's long-range plan. I believe we also have an agreement with the DOT for that same location.
So there has been some initial discussion with DOT.
Yes.
Can you enlighten us as?
Awaiting funding? We do have a memorandum of understanding with the DOT for those improvements on Highway 50. It was approved by the council, I don't know how many years ago.
So DOT has in fact approved or at least accepted that there will be some type of traffic control.
It was part of the traffic study for that corridor, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions tonight?
I just want to add, yeah, thank you. Anyone in the community, if they have questions pertaining to this development or amenities at the resort, I might be opening Pandora's box, but I'm available to answer, meet with them personally to address concerns, because a lot of it is just understanding and getting the information. So I appreciate a number of individuals being here today so they could hear that. And if there's other questions that arise, we can address those.
Thank you. Thank you. Jackie, did you come back? Want to add something?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a few notes about the process. Like Rick had touched on some of those already, and Mayor, you had noted that it will be a long process, which is definitely the case. One thing I'm not sure was mentioned is the fact that this project would need a comprehensive plan amendment. Currently, this portion of the Lake Lawn property is shown for Parks and Recreation in our comprehensive plan. And so before we can approve any development of residential here, we would need to go through the process of amending the comprehensive plan. So staff will get that process started in the coming days. Will likely involve a joint meeting of this body and the council and hold a public hearing on the proposed comprehensive plan amendment, which is the first step before any further development can be considered or approved. If that comprehensive plan amendment is approved at that time, then because this property is on planned development, we'll need to go through a plan development amendment process. These gentlemen are very familiar with that process, as are you. But just for the benefit of everyone here, that would involve an amendment to the general development plan. The applicants tonight have indicated that they are only going to be proposing the general development plan for the single family, and the multifamily might be a later phase amendment. And then if the general development plan is approved, then they would submit an application for a PIP or a planned or precise implementation plan as well, plus plenty of utility review and other engineering review and review by staff on quite a bit of different other details. Just wanted to make a few notes about where we are in the process right now. So this is the concept plan review. So it's basically step 2 of the planned development amendment process, at which plan commissioners are invited to give comments to the applicant, as has been done so far. The zoning code does require this concept plan amendment, but it also states that best practice is in some cases to have multiple iterations of concept plan review. And so if there's any hesitation by this body, or if there's more information that you need, I would encourage you to make those requests now, because once we get started on the process, again, it's a long process and we can check in on it at every time, but now would be a good time to voice those concerns, questions, or more information that you feel you don't have now that you need in order to fully consider this project. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you may have, but just wanted to provide that framework before we wrapped up today.
That's helpful, thank you. And any other questions? And again, I appreciate everyone's involvement with the review and the discussion tonight. I think it's a nice gesture on your part. You said you might be opening Pandora, but to be accessible, I definitely want to appreciate or thank those of you in attendance who were respectful of the process, orderly, and I think we tried to cover a lot of the questions and the comments that were out there. I know we probably didn't get every one of them covered, but stay engaged. Heard our staff, Jackie, talk about the process, and that will continue. So thank you all for being here, and thank you guys for providing.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is item number 7, the building inspector's report. Okay, activity report, Steve?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, got the activity report on the agenda there. Not sure if you have any specific questions on it or anything. Did have another busy year here in the city of Delavan. A lot of developments with what we talked about with Harbor Club. They had quite a few homes. And we have a lot of our vacant lots are getting filled with homes. And so we've talked about this in the past, that if we don't have some new lots coming up, that there's not gonna be places for people to build, so.
Any questions for Steve?
Not really a question. I brought it up before, and something I'd like to introduce, maybe we can get it on the agenda for the future discussion, and that's some nice signs coming into our city.
Kevin? I saw your hand raised.
Yep. I have one question about your memo. T, you said staff met with the potential purchaser of the undeveloped portion of the creek side and discussed options to complete the remaining housing units. And my question here is, did you talk about what kind of housing units potentially would fit in that area?
I'm gonna let Mark met with them more than I have, so I'm gonna let Mark answer that one.
Yeah, it was primarily, currently that area was platted for, or proposed to be platted as 4-unit buildings. I believe they are looking at either making those as 2-story units or potentially doing those as 3-unit buildings. Primarily that's due to fire building code changes that would require sprinklers in the larger 4-unit buildings.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other questions? Not. We'll move on to item number 8. For adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. The motion is accepted. Second. All in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.